think that's really important in an essay. Explain what show not tell means. As many hooks as you want that you think are your strengths, that describes you as a person. For me, I think the most important ones are 100% essay, interview, and teacher recommendations. So for all my interviews, the first thing I do when I walk in is when creating your list of extracurriculars, you have to strategically Interview is another place for me to express a part of my character and personality. And in the interview, you can't really express that in an essay. You can only, this is your person, your character, your personality. You can only communicate that through people interactions and connection. And yeah, just like the way you express yourself as a human being. In terms of breaking down the process of the interview, I think your first impression is the most important. So for all my interviews, the first thing I do when I walk in is make eye contact with the person and like stare them down, almost to a point where it was kind of weird, but I wanted to make sure that I wanted to communicate to them that I was there with a purpose. I obviously had to give them a very hard, firm handshake and smile. Or in the beginning of the interview, usually what happens is, hey, tell me about yourself. What are the things you do? Like, they have no idea who you are, the interviewer. They don't really get that much information from the school about you as an applicant. So it's up to you how to lead the conversation and what you want to talk about. And I think that's also a very important component of an interview. A lot of students, they misconceive this idea that in an interview you just want to tell them everything and all these accomplishments that you did. It's not necessarily that. I just found, again, my hooks that I found for my essay or just my application in general. I found those hooks and I found those little specific activities within those hooks that also connect to other activities. And I said, I do this, that. And then the interviewer has now those hooks and they'll ultimately ask you about each one and then you dive into it. So it's about a conversation and it turns into a conversation and showing, not necessarily revealing everything at one point in the beginning, but like showing little things here and there and then connecting them. I think that's also another skill in an interview that I learned that is really important because ultimately they want people once they graduate from college to go into the real world. And in the real world,
it's not mandatory, but recommended, right?
It's not mandatory, but I really highly recommend it. A lot of people tend to like just do extracurricular, like do things for the sake of doing it, like how I did it my freshman and sophomore year. They just want to have a lot of things. They think doing everything will make you look like a well-rounded person, but it's not necessarily that. There wasn't really like a connection between my extracurriculars during my freshman and sophomore years, but ultimately during my junior and senior years, I had this like realization that, oh gosh, like I'm doing all of these random extracurriculars without necessarily a connection between them. And so during junior year, I started to hone down on the ones that I found passionate and were things that I truly cared about. Most of them were about diversity, medicine, science, community, and service. It's not just about doing those extracurriculars. I think what's more important is what you make of them and your roles and how your role impacts that certain club or committee or community. Extracurriculars in general, I feel like are another space for you to make those connections between your hooks. Not necessarily like a hook, like you can't introduce a hook by listing an extracurricular on your application. Those are spaces where you can connect, this is what I want to do and this is how I did it. So that's the connection point through your extracurricular. So when creating your list of extracurriculars, you have to strategically figure out which ones you're most passionate about, and then which ones relate to what you want to do with your future most closely. For me personally, this is like my personal opinion about it. I think SAT grades are not that important. As long as you do your best on everything, because I know even at my school there's a plethora of people with different SAT scores and GPAs that still got in. I don't think it's important at all. For me, I think the most important ones are 100% essay, interview, and teacher recommendations. And then like middle importance is like extracurriculars. No, obviously I did well, but I didn't do like amazing. Like I wasn't like a straight A student throughout high school. I didn't get a 4.0 GPA. I didn't do that. It's about the application in your story. 오늘 한국말 잘 못해서 영어로 많이 했는데 오늘 enjoy 했으면 구독, 좋아요 꼭 눌러주세요. Oh my gosh, Mom, I cannot. I'm so awkward.